that. Oh.
Oh.
No, I need...
I was taking the napkin. I wasn't touching the phone. I was trying to clean up this so that you didn't have napkins in your video.
Touching everything. All right, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to be talking about a couple things. I had my yearly security certification. We talked about some really interesting things in class. One of the things that I want to talk about is a potential fine for security guards of up to $1,000. I think that's very important. But first, we're going to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. Morgan and I are both from Kansas City. We're both Chiefs fans. And it's been crazy. I lived in Kansas City since the late 90s. So I remember, the Chiefs being horrible at football and living through some pretty lean times. I actually used to work with a girl, and she was the nanny for Elvis Gerbach. Do you remember the name Elvis Gerbach? Elvis Gerbach was the Kansas City Chiefs quarterback in like 97, 98, right? And this is back when the Chiefs were horrible. But anyway, she was their nanny. So he used to come into the gym and
Then I had to have met him because I did for 1 or 2 years, and it would have been somewhere between 97 and 98, the Kansas City Chiefs cheerleading camp that was a weekend long.
Yeah.
And my parents signed me up for that, and really it was just so my dad could meet the cheerleaders.
Right. Yeah.
No, I'm not kidding. He got them all to sign his shirt. Anyways.
Dad, I'm not even into cheerleading. Oh, you'll enjoy it. It'll be fun, trust me.
But we got to meet the entire Chiefs squad as well, like at the end of it,
So anyway, we both remember when there wasn't a lot of attention on the Chiefs, but in the last 4 to 5 years, the attention, the national and worldwide recognition for the Chiefs has just been crazy.
Well, they couldn't stand by and let the Royals just bring Kansas City back
to life. That is true.
Right? So true. Good on the Chiefs.
So recently, in the last couple of days, there's been a big outcry for the kicker. I don't even know what the kicker's name is. I think his last name is Butker or Butner.
I feel like there was a Harrison there somewhere. Harrison,
yeah.
I don't know.
But he apparently is I don't know if he's a graduate from Benedictine College, which from the name sounds like a Catholic school. And apparently from the commencement speech that he gave, he seems, from what he said, like he's a practicing Catholic or at the very least a strong, religious Christian. But he made some statements that have really angered a lot of people. They're comparing him. I'm not making this comparison. This is what I have seen on several news stations and several talk shows and podcasts.
Okay.
They're comparing him to Kaepernick, and they're saying that he is putting himself in a position where he should be treated the same way as Kaepernick, that if Kaepernick was kicked out for exercising free speech, that he should be kicked out of the league. A lot of backlash from the LGBTQ community, from the female community, because his comments are being taken as being, misogynistic and homophobic. So without playing what he said, I'm just going to paraphrase. He was just basically saying all the women that are in attendance here, you've all worked hard to get your degrees. You're about to walk across this stage. And as you walk across this stage, you're probably thinking about the different things you're going to do in life, the positions you're going to take, the promotions you're going to get. And he says, again, paraphrasing, there's no greater job that you're going to have than to be a homemaker, to be a mother, and to be a wife. And, basically that is your calling in life, is to be a homemaker, mother, and a wife. And so people were like, hey, this isn't the time or place for you to be saying this. You shouldn't be saying this to these people that are in this moment. Keep your opinions to yourself. However, it is a Christian college. The people that go to that school, I'm assuming if you're going to that school that you're somewhat aligned with those beliefs, right?
Right.
And there was no big pushback. There's been a lot of pushback during graduation season at different schools. I don't know if you know this or not, but at Duke University last week, they had their commencement and they brought in Jerry Seinfeld. Okay. And so they gave Jerry Seinfeld a honorary degree, and then clearly Jerry's Jewish and he supports a lot of the things that are going on in the Middle East right now. And so a large number of the students got up and walked out. They got up and walked out off the field, turned their backs on him. People in the stands got up and walked out in a show of protest against, what he supports and what he stands for. And you've been seeing a lot of that kind of stuff on college campuses. So my question as a woman, since you're the woman in the house here, aside from the cats, what do you think about what he said? I let you listen to it earlier. Did you think that he was out of line, or like, what's your thoughts?
Well, no. Listen, I don't give a fuck what anyone else thinks, says, or does. Like,
well, I need you to give a fuck for the podcast here, because we're talking about it.
I mean that, like, you know, I've tried to put myself in a position, if I was sitting there, I'd probably just snort and laugh, right, about that, because those aren't my beliefs. Now, even me today, those aren't my beliefs, that the greatest calling a woman is going to have is to be a wife and a mother. On the flip side of that, that's where I say I don't care. Someone else's might be.
Yeah.
Just because it's not mine doesn't mean it's not someone else's, right? So that's where I just, my, you know, I don't care attitude in that way comes from, it's no different than the woman who's like, wants to be a blazing fucking CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. The woman we saw in Kansas City, Katie Warner.
Right, yeah.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to be this blazing CEO in this massive, you know, billion-dollar company and makes choices to do that. Like, if she were to say, every woman can, she did, every woman can do this, you guys can blah, 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 and we watched her on stage, that's not call to revolt, you know, the women who don't want to do that, that's not a call to revolt against her and to shame her for being that. Like, everyone has their own views, time and place. For him, he kind of couldn't have been at a more appropriate time and place to say the things he said. And I don't feel like it's a reflection on his work, and I'll say work versus even just sports, because he's not on the clock. He was articulate in how he said things, and I understand how people can interpret the things that he says, you know, to be one thing over the other, but I may not agree with him, but at the same time, I think, you know, like, it doesn't offend me, it doesn't affect me.
If you were going to that school and you were sitting in the audience, would you, if you went to that school strictly just to get the degree, and like, you know, a lot of times you can go to a school that has a name, that has name recognition, and it can be aligned with like a certain religion, but that's not necessarily a religion, right? Liberty University is a perfect example. Liberty University is a Protestant religious school, and they have been very clear that they are trying to position themselves to be the Protestant version of Notre Dame. They want to be that big in sports, that big in name recognition. You know, there's a lot of aspects of things that you have to do in classes that you have to take at Liberty that I don't feel had anything to do with me getting my degree. But if I'm going to go to that school, I have to do that.
Right. If
you chose to go to Pepperdine or Benedictine, I guess it was, and you didn't believe in that and you were sitting there, would you feel that that part of the speech was disrespectful to you, or would you just like chalk it up to that person has an opinion and I'm not?
Yeah, no, I would chalk it up to whatever. In one ear and out the other. Not to get in a hole. People get too into their feelings. Every single thing. We are in a world of feelings only and nothing else. And I don't operate that way. I wasn't raised that way, like in terms of, you know, until... And there's also, articulate's not the word, but he wasn't disrespectful and demeaning in, derogatory. Maybe that's the word I'm looking for. He wasn't derogatory in his speech. If he was like, women, get your ass in the kitchen and blah, blah, blah. Yeah, then I'd probably be like, you know, okay, what the fuck, you know. But at the same time, not to discount the kicker's place on a team, but at the same time, you kind of go, okay, pecking order. I feel like compared to everyone else, there's probably a lot more people to replace him in his job than there are. I don't know.
You know what I was telling you earlier is like, I feel like the American Christian has done such a disservice to the religion.
Yeah.
Because, you know, like if you practice any other religion, when you're in that space, for the most part, people tend to give you a level of respect to have a viewpoint. So if you're Jewish and you're in synagogue or you're in a religious moment and you're talking about your faith and how your faith carries over into your daily life, people see that and they have an air of respect. Not to say that people don't disrespect people's religions, but it's almost like accepted that, well, that's their religion and that's how they see things, right? Same thing if you're Muslim, same thing if you're Buddhist. But in America, we've watered down Christianity so much that the average person who isn't a Christian, from the outside looking in, if you just say, hey, I'm a Christian, what does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything to people because, they say that the worst, what do they say? Like the worst example for the Christian faith is Christians. It's like we have a very buffet style religion of Christianity, version of Christianity in America, where it's like, I'm going to take little scoops of this and I believe in that part, but this other part of the Bible, I don't subscribe to or adhere to that. I'm 100% into the anti this, but I don't subscribe to the anti that because that doesn't align with what I want.
100%.
I'm going to quote Jesus and the Bible, but I'm going to be a horrible person and mean to everybody.
We as a country, it has been weaponized. So
Right.
As someone I am not a self-proclaimed Christian or anything really. It's just used as a weapon.
So my point in that is that when people say something or do something that's offensive, and then people on the other side of that conversation are like, hey, you're being racist, you're being homophobic, you're being xenophobic, you're being misogynistic. Well, then that person tries to cover, and maybe rightfully so, they're saying, well, that's my belief, that's my religious belief. But it's almost like people are only defaulting to being a Christian when it's to cover up or to be a platform or a baseline for some thought that is being challenged. Because most oftentimes those people aren't living their lives in an outwardly Christian way where they're professing their Christian faith on a daily basis and living as a Christian. So I think that sometimes comes into play when people are like upset about something that seems like it's being counter to a lot of the things that are just kind of normalized in culture today. Right.
But that's where it's a slippery slope, because I'll word it this way, which is how I worded it earlier. If he said just 180 degrees different, the opposite spectrum of what he said, 180 degrees.
You don't belong in the kitchen. You should never be in the kitchen. You should only be successful. You should this. You should that.
Yes. If he said the opposite of telling men to just embrace their masculinity, blah, blah, blah. If he said the opposite of what he actually said, no one would say a fucking word. And that's where it's a nuance.
Probably get like a shoe deal or something.
That's where people's feelings are trumping the reality of things, and where you go, listen, that's where I look at it and can remove my feelings from what he said. It's not applicable to me. I am smart enough to know that what he said is or isn't, and even not from a religious standpoint, it's not applicable to me. So to me, I didn't view anything of what he said as like, this is so dangerous. It's no more dangerous to me what he said in the capacity he said than someone who speaks the complete opposite of that and says that. They're both as equal dangerous or not dangerous to me. So
it's weird that colleges are places where we're starting to stifle free speech, because that's literally supposed to be the place in academia where you challenge people's ideas, right? Like you're supposed to send your kids to school or go to school with a certain set of beliefs and standards and thoughts, and then they're supposed to open up this aspect of education that you've never seen before and then challenge those beliefs. Everything about research is about, you propose a hypothesis and now you have to prove that. You come up with a theory, you have to now, be able to back that up. You have to be able to cite your sources, cite your research. So it's crazy that like now in a college setting, they're telling people you can't have counter views. And I don't care if it's a counter view to his or his to theirs. Like, I just think that we need to be able to have discourse and have difference of opinion to where people can say what they believe and what they feel.
100%. And I feel like anyone who's really shocked by this, we all know people who have those beliefs.
Yeah.
How did some of my, I'll say, immediate family, my mom, you know, how did she react when I'm like, I don't think I want to physically bear, I know I don't want to physically bear children and blah, 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 but I want to do this, like, you know, but okay, I think adoption may be in the future, but I draw that parallel because it's like she was, you know, pretty upset at that because she wouldn't have a grandchild, and I'm like, no, you will, more than likely, if we adopt or we do this, plus you have children. I'm like, it's just not something that is laid out for me. But we all know people from a religious standpoint, and my mom's not one, but extended family, who's like, from a religious standpoint, you'll never know what it's like to be a mother or to be this or to be that. And I don't look at them and just think I should, I don't want to say dox them, but dox them and make their life hell and ruin their life because they feel that way. They feel that way, and
which is perfectly fine.
Which is perfectly fine, because at the end of the day, they can have their opinion on these things, and that is so totally fine with me. It's just not, and I don't know if it's because I'm a secure person or whatever, but it's not going to waver what I think and feel about my own choices.
I feel like people today are so insecure that they want everyone around them to affirm that what they feel is right.
I agree.
Like, you have to be comfortable enough to like what you like, to dig what you dig, believe what you believe, without people constantly propping you up that what you have chosen to believe in or the path that you've chosen to take is the right path. You cannot continually look for the outside people to say, no, you're doing
zero
good.
Confidence.
No. Hey, you're doing good.
I so agree with that.
Hey. Okay. It's like, fucking grow up.
Agree.
You and I have some similar background in this. Like, guys, look, I was dating white girls, first generation post Jim Crow in Arkansas. I'm almost 50 years old. So, like, you know, interracial relationships aren't anything new. But I'm from Arkansas. Okay, I just want y'all to understand, like, what people see and view and experience as racism, and I'm not discounting any of that. I experience racism today here in Portland. It ain't what I experienced in Arkansas, where, like, legitimately,
we drove through 5 years ago and you said, do not stop for gas in this town. You like preemptively said, you were like, you need to make sure we have enough gas. We can't stop in this particular town.
People, there's places in Arkansas even today that you cannot legitimately be comfortable in. When I was Harrison, Arkansas is the literal hub of the Klan. I know that we use that term, the Klan, all the time. It's kind of like saying someone's a Nazi, right? It's used so loosely. No, I'm from the area where the legitimate Klan is, right? 6 or 7 years ago, we were driving from Missouri to where I'm from in Arkansas, and we had to drive through Harrison. Driving through Harrison when I was a kid was a no-no. You did not drive through Harrison, and if you did not stop. Okay, you got gas before Harrison, you got gas after Harrison. You didn't stop in Harrison. So I was telling Morgan about this, and this is like 2016-ish.
2018.
2018, right?
Yeah.
So we're not talking very long ago. We're driving through Harrison, and there's a big billboard.
Okay.
Ooh, boy. Hang on a second. Hang on. Am I back?
Are we still live?
That's YouTube giving me.
Do they do that? Yeah, they're
That's YouTube giving me a warning, because like they've done that before. They've cut my stream off. Like,
okay,
if you say certain things or.
Let me word it then.
Hang on. Let me just say this. We drove through Harrison. There's a huge billboard, and it says diversity is white.
Genocide.
O-side, right?
Yep.
Like all kinds of billboards like that. I kind of lost my train of thought because like everything just got kind of caught here.
Yeah. I remember looking at you, and because it took me, I read the billboard because it was huge. It was like a fucking 100-foot billboard.
Yeah,
it was the biggest billboard I've ever seen in my life. And I read that, and I was driving, and I said it in my head a couple times, and then I looked at you, and I went, that billboard just said, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm computing that, like, what did I just read? And you were like, oh yeah, no, you're going to see all kinds of things like that driving through here. And
Somebody
I was like,
says, what kind of billboard? I think I got cut off. Let me back up because there was I don't know if what showed on your side, but my phone froze. So what I was talking about is we were saying that in today's society, people are always looking for someone else on the outside to affirm and validate the decisions that they've made. And that's any decision, right? They're always looking for people to say, yes, what you believe in, what you've chosen, what you want for your life, for your experiences, that's right. And that's not the way the world works. You're going to come across people that have differing opinions and that see the world differently. It all comes down to respect. The point that I was trying to make is that I am almost 50 years old. I grew up in a time where I was the first generation after Jim Crow in Arkansas. I have always dated white girls. I've always been into white girls, white women. Like at the time that I was doing that in Arkansas, that was not something that was just openly accepted. And my dad was very adamant with me that like, look, I'm not going to tell you that you can't date who you want to date, that you can't love who you want to love. But what I am going to tell you is this: everybody in this area is not going to be okay with that. They're just not. They're not going to be okay with it. They're not going to co-sign it. They're not going to, treat you a certain way. They're not going to respect you. Like, you're going to have to understand that if you go down this road, it's going to be tough. But that being said, love who you love, do what you want to do, live your life, but don't come to me complaining that people aren't patting you on the back and accepting of it, right? And this is not I'm not saying this based on LGBTQ or anything like that. I don't want anybody to misconstrue what I'm saying. I'm saying in general.
Yeah.
My wife has chosen to not have children. People have given her a hard time for that. How could you choose to not have children? Children are the best thing in the world. Children, being just like this, being a mother means everything. That's not how she sees it. And she is no different. She's no less of a woman, and she's no less of a nurturer. She's no less of a advocate for women's rights or anything because she's made that choice. But she, at the same time, doesn't give a shit what anybody thinks, right? So it's about anything. So when that kicker is talking about that, you listen to what he's saying and you tune him out if it doesn't apply to you. If you don't appreciate it, you are more than welcome to voice that. But I don't think that he should get in trouble for having an opinion that doesn't align with other people. And I'm not even saying that I agree with what he's saying. I just don't think that he should be canceled for that question.
I think the point you were making, because you were talking about basically interracial relationships in accordance with the billboard.
Right.
And that billboard said that diversity is another name for white.
O-side. Right.
Yeah. O-side. Put the G in front of that. Put the gin in front of it, I guess. But, and so I think you were going with that is, we have been in situations where we clearly know and can tell people do not like the fact that we're an interracial couple together.
Yeah.
Out in public. And today, we're in 2024. And I for sure know, especially before moving to Portland, and Portland is a whole other racist beast, you know, but say pre Portland up to 2020, we experienced, things from people pretty frequently who weren't into that. But you know what? We didn't sit there and go, well, we should just break up. Yeah. Everyone else doesn't like it. They haven't affirmed us. We don't give a shit who affirms us and who doesn't affirm us and who agrees with us and doesn't agree.
Well, speaking of agree and doesn't agree, did y'all hear the story about the teacher that had the students braiding his hair?
Taking his braids out.
So Morgan and I, we talked about that the other day after work, but it was super late, so we didn't stream it. The teacher was fired. So this is a young... I think he's like maybe 26.
Mid to late
20s. Seems like he's really liked and involved with his students. But apparently he had his students, female students, mind you, unbraiding his like dreads or dreadlocks or whatever, or braids. And he was live streaming it. So he's literally live streaming from class.
The last 10 minutes
last 10 minutes of class, and he's saying that he was live streaming it because a lot of the parents of the kids follow his social media, and he was doing this so that like it was seen on the up and up that there was no misconstruing what was going on, and that it was the last 10 minutes of class, that there was nothing that needed to be done work wise. But a lot of people responded and reacted saying that this was way too across the line, that he had violated some boundaries by allowing these kids to be so close to him, to be in an intimate space where they're touching his hair, in close proximity. And so he lost his job. And so Morgan had a completely different outlook on this than a lot of people. What was your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, I think it's bullshit that he lost his job for a multitude of reasons. The first being that, a lot of people were like, that's an intimate act and blah, blah, blah. Like, everyone's intimacy levels are different, if you want to use that word. Everyone's intimacy levels are different, but I come from a place where I still to this day, 17 years post high school, have relationships with 2 teachers. In high school and shortly after high school. In high school, I went to my teacher's home and had dinner with her and her husband, and she was in her 50s. And so, and I know, again, that's 17 to 20 years ago, but there was relationships formed that still carry to this day with some of these teachers, where I get happy birthdays or Merry Christmases and they purchase from my business, things like that. And I think that those relationships are important. So where my different viewpoint comes in, I guess, or different, is if it was a female teacher who was like, hey, I've got a hair appointment right after school. Can one of you come real quick, take these braids out of my hair? It's the last 10 minutes of class, and female students came over. No one would say shit. If it was the male teacher, if he had male students come over and take his braids out, and we don't know how it led to what students took his braids out, right? If I'm solely basing it on gender, but if male students took out his braids, no one would say shit. It would be completely different.
Well, let me ask, this person, Shark Tank, says they're in a trusted position and there should be no appearance of impropriety. Does anybody think that it would be a difference in the way that it looks optically if it was a male teacher and male students, or if it was a female teacher and female students? Anybody that wants to comment, do you think that changes the optics? And does it matter at all? Morgan is saying that the optics of a male teacher having male students remove his braids would be different, and that the optics of a female teacher having female students remove her braids would be different. I think that the optics of male teacher, female students does play into it. And I think that, we talk about on this channel all the time with security stuff that 90% of what we get ourselves into is optics, right? We talk about optics all the time. So I'm agreeing with you that it's an issue of optics, but that's kind of where the male teacher has to recognize how this looks to people on the outside is going to play into whether or not I keep my job.
I agree. And optics are important, but I guess for me, him live streaming and showing nothing is amiss, to me, I'm going, you're showing nothing is amiss. There was no overly casual touches and this and that, like when you watch the video. So, I look at something like that and I guess I don't see it the same. And then if I take it a step further, like there is always conversations about strong black role models needed, especially strong black men role models that are needed. And if these students and him have a rapport enough for something, where like that he says that, or he says, do I have any volunteers? Can a couple of you help me do this? And if it's 2 or 3 girls that jump up, or the whole class jumps up, and he's like, all right, guys, come take these out, help me get prepared for whatever it is in that way. And he sits down and they're doing it. He's live streaming it. Like the kids now, we have a teacher who has lost his job, who by all appearances was doing I feel like what he thought was best in live streaming it, showing nothing is amiss. And we talked about this where someone brought up like, oh, well, yeah, if this could create crushes, or if students already have crushes on him. You can't stop a student from having a crush or thinking their teacher is attractive in any way, shape, or form. Nothing, like, it is up to him to set the boundaries and to enforce said boundaries of whatever that is. So when we talk about strong, or positive Black role models, now the kids in particular don't have that. So my question is, like, has anyone asked how the kids feel about their teacher losing his job about this? The parents of the kids, I'd be curious to hear from the parents of the kids in those videos. And how do they feel about this? Because maybe those kids truly look up to him and have that rapport where they can go, I know that I had a few teachers that if something was going on and I needed someone to talk to, the teachers I had in class, like, I felt comfortable enough to go to those few teachers if there was ever a problem and say, this is what's going on, right? Creating those safe spaces.
I think a couple of things. You and I were talking about how in a vacuum, and I'm going to say this, in a vacuum, that the onus of enforcing boundaries when it comes to middle school to high school age kids having crushes on teachers, the onus of the boundary is on the adult.
Yes.
Right? And I did agree with you that I think that one of the benefits of having that teacher or a teacher like that in that environment is that we need Black men to reinforce strong boundaries. And we need Black men to be able to project that you can be in a position of leadership, that you can be young, that you can be cool, you can be hip, and not violate that boundary and not violate that trust. Okay? So in and of itself, you and I are in agreement with that. I think to not look at that situation and know that in 2024, people are going to look at it a certain way, have a certain reaction, that it's going to catch fire. We live in such a litigious society where all it takes is for someone to view that the wrong way, for one of the students to feel differently about it after the fact, for anyone to take it in his comments out of context, right? I'm just making an observation here. It's so easy for that to go left. Then the school is on the hook for a lawsuit. You have all of the, potential investigations that could come from that. It just opens up a can of worms. So for him to not be self-aware enough to go, even if I am doing everything perfectly right and I have no ill intentions, this is potentially going to be seen as sideways by a lot of people and it's going to cause a problem, which clearly it did. That just goes to show you that he's missing a level of maturity in reading the room. Not saying that his thought process or his desire or his willingness to be a good teacher and all that stuff isn't there. That's a fatal flaw, to not look at that and go, all things being considered, this is still going to be seen a certain way, and that's not a good look for him to still go forward with that, is my thoughts.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but boy, I must carry that immature gene as well.
I don't think there's anybody
immature gene as well, because
Billy Kid, I want you to know I used to live in Harrisburg. You said you live in Jackson, Mississippi. I used to live in Harrisburg, man. I put on more weight living in Harrisburg. I put on like 80 pounds. That food down there was crazy. Just a side note, all right? I put on so much. I got so fat down there. That food wasn't crazy. It was so good. Billy says, in an opinionated world, someone will always disagree with you or see a situation differently than the next person. So, with him live streaming it, it could have put himself on blast. Well, it definitely did. Yeah.
Which I guess in a nutshell is better than him not live streaming it and going home and being like,
Imagine.
oh, I helped Mr. X.
Oh my God,
take
imagine
his
that.
grades out and blah, blah, blah. And then a mom being like, what? Which that's where I feel like context comes in, where he crossed his T's and dotted his I's, short of not doing it at all. But I just didn't see any impropriety, and that's me. And
the comedian Bill Burr, he has this really funny joke where he's like, man, I love kids. He was like, I used to love like You know, he's like, I fly all over the country doing shows, and I used to love like making faces at kids and waving at them and like, you know, messing up their hair. How you doing, Rusty? He's like, now he's like, I'm like eyes up. Like, he's like, don't say shit to me. He's like, I don't want to get caught up. I don't want to get put in a situation where like
it's wild that this such situation can happen. To me, something that is not inappropriate at all, given how he did it with live streaming it. And we can have this on one end of the pendulum.
Please do not say anything that's going to get me in trouble.
I'm not. I'm smarter than that. And then on the I'll just say, and then on the opposite side, we have entire districts that keep everything from parents. We can have something like this, and then on the opposite side, we can have things where they keep everything from the parents. Like when, I don't even know if the pendulum has finished swinging, you know, if that's one end and what I just said is the other, or how much more fucking atrocious it can get. How much further it can swing.
Well, since you're being vague, I don't know what you're talking about. And, yeah.
I'm just saying it's crazy.
Move on to the next topic.
I'm just saying it's crazy.
Crazy. Interesting.
Yeah. I hope he finds another job. I hope he finds a better paying job. I hope he garners a lot of support if he needs the support, because I do think it was an unjustly letting go of his job. I can see them saying this is a one and only warning you have, right? Something like that. But 0 to firing.
It's a cold world out here.
Yeah.
All right. So I went through my security research yesterday, and there is I don't know if this is a new law or if this is a standing law, but there is it's Oregon Revised Statute 162.245. Let me read it to you, okay? This is the Refusal to Assist Law Enforcement Oregon Revised Statute. A person commits the offense of refusing to assist a peace officer if, upon commanded by a person known by the person to be a peace officer, the person unreasonably refuses or fails to assist in effecting an authorized arrest or preventing another from committing a crime. Equally as important to the language of the offense, it is a potential penalty. The Oregon legislature has chosen to designate this offense as a Class B violation punishable by a maximum fine of $1,000 with a presumptive fine of $260. We use the word only to stress the legislative's decision to ascribe low severity to this offense. Furthermore, successful proof of this offense requires the government to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the person unreasonably refused or failed to assist. It would be difficult to argue that a private citizen is being unreasonable if he or she were to hesitate when being commanded to assist in effecting the arrest of another person or to prevent another person from committing a crime. A civilian would be understandably hesitant due to the risk present when coming into close contact with an unknown person who has drawn the attention of the police. It would appear that the legislative were more concerned about making sure all civilians compelled, when commanded, they would have made the crime to refuse. They would have made a crime as opposed to a violation. That they did not. So they're saying that this is a violation, not a crime. And under criminal law, you have two types of things. You have crimes and violations. Speeding is a traffic violation, right? Obviously, assault would be a crime. So what they're saying is that if you work in the private security industry and a police officer commands you to, grab someone, stop someone, detain someone, handcuff someone, assist in a fight, that you can be fined up to $1,000 if you do not participate. Now, that seems like a pretty easy ask, right? But we're often told in private security that, well, we're not often told. It's literally in our manual. We talked about it yesterday. Security guards have no duty to act. We have zero duty to act. So in our capacity, if we see a crime that is being committed if there's a, I don't know, domestic violence situation that's happening in the parking lot and two people are fighting, the security guard is not obligated to get in and break up that fight. Now, whether you will or you won't is a personal decision that you would make. I'm not here saying what I would do. I'm just making an example. A lot of times when I make these examples, people are like, oh, you're a piece of shit. You wouldn't get involved. It's not what I'm saying. Okay. I'm just saying that legally you do not have to.
Yeah.
Okay. So in a situation where private security guards are always faced with this dilemma, we are not a part of a union and we do not have qualified immunity. So in situations of violence or situations of stopping crime, we don't have that authority. We only have the authority to involve ourselves with things that happen in our presence. The secondary layer to that is that even things that happen in our presence by post order, which is the contractual agreement between the companies that we work for and the companies that we're servicing, it might preclude us from getting involved. So if I'm working for a security company that is servicing, say, a Walmart, the contract might say, under no circumstances do we want private security going hands-on in any situation. You are only to observe and report. So by that rationale, the contract already states that we're not supposed to get involved. Okay? The law states that security guards have no duty to act. So then if we're in a situation where we're in the peripheral and a police officer says, hey, get involved and do X, Y, and Z, the question that came up yesterday in the class was, if we are directed by law enforcement by threat of being penalized and fined in the commission of what we're doing at the direction of that law enforcement, are we now covered under qualified immunity? And this is where qualified immunity is so important. If I go and tackle a guy at the direction of a police officer and he breaks his arm, and then he tells me to handcuff that person, I take said broken arm and I now pull it behind his back, further extenuating the injury to this person. And I'm seen on camera. I'm the guy that did it. I tackled the guy. I pulled his arm back. I handcuffed him. I rolled him over. And in the commission of him falling, he hit his head. Now he's having a seizure. All of these things are happening. Meanwhile, everybody that's standing around is doing this. Let's go this way.
You're the only one who films horizontally.
Right? And then on social media, it says ABC Security. ABC Security, Officer Johnson. Now, once this situation blows up, comes a statewide story, national story. It's all over X. It's in the webosphere. And it's deemed that the situation, for whatever reason, it was too excessive. And this was the conversation that we brought up. Like, well, now what? Does the company maintain that security guard? Because each security officer that's hired here in Oregon, at least, you're an at-will employee. Now, by contract, the company can say, hey, that ain't us. It's in the contract. Do not go hands-on. Yeah, but the police officer told me to. That's between you and the police officer. Mm-hmm. ABC Security was very clear in the fact that we did not want our officers to go hands-on in this situation. We have now terminated Officer Johnson. Okay, now we're looking at Walmart. Hey, no, don't look over here. We told ABC Security to make sure that officers, including Officer Johnson, did not go hands-on, to only call the cops. The cops showed up. You guys take it up with the city of Portland. City of Portland, you commanded Officer Johnson to do so on and so forth. Yeah, he understands by his policy, he understands by the class that he's taken, because he is a DPSST officer, that he has no duty to act. If he didn't want to do it, he could have taken the fine. Matter of fact, $1,000 is the fine at the maximum level. The minimum level is $260. We're not obligated to cover him under qualified immunity or represent him in court. Do you guys see where this is going? And so when we ask the question about the logical outcome of how this could go, guess what the answer was? No?
Take the fine or potentially lose your job. At minimum. Yeah.
Like Scooby-Doo. Right on, Rose Raggy. This is the position that they put security guards in. I'm all for that legislation. If you want to put that legislation in the books, also below it should be the protection for that officer. Why did they go so far as to explain, you know, the private citizen might see it this way? Like somebody brought that up in a meeting before it was put into the state legislator, Oregon revised statute. Somebody clearly had that conversation because it got put in there.
Yeah.
No one thought to say, well, what's the protection for the security officer if he gets involved? I'm not saying that I wouldn't get involved. There's been plenty of times where I've been standing there when the police have come to a situation, they've gone hands on, and I'm ready and willing, if asked, to jump in, right? But that is a great question. I don't think that a lot of times people that are working in the security industry are asking these questions. It doesn't just stop there. Every situation that you get involved in, every time that you're here in Portland, they're doing a thing where, like now, if we call the cops for anything that involves violence, the cops show up, they document everything, and now everybody gets attached. So security guard that goes hands-on, security guard that's standing nearby, representative from the store that was there, the loss prevention officer that's a part of the report. Everybody's got to go to court now. And they document, did the person say something racially charged? Did the person do this? It's like the police bureaus, like, we're all going. If we got to go, if we're going to do this, because, the argument has been that the police don't respond. And then the argument has been that they don't prosecute. So it's almost like they're taking this stance, well, if this is what you want, everybody come along for the process.
They're only doing that because it's a fucking election.
Okay, I get that. But I'm just saying that still, I don't think that a lot of times security guards understand that it doesn't just stop at your interaction, that there's a 3 to 6 month involvement that goes far beyond just you going hands-on, making a detainment, and transferring them to the police. Like, you're not just able to do this anymore, But that is something that I was interested in. What is the protection for private security guards if they get into this? When you guys are doing your certification and your recertification, I know that the information is dry. I know that it's boring. I know that you would rather probably be anywhere than sitting in that class for that research. You better be listening to what they're talking about. That manual is like 100 and some odd pages thick. You better go through it and you better read it. There's so much in there. One of the things that I'm going to talk about, I won't do it now because we're at like the 45-minute mark. There is a civil penalty. There's a civil penalty that can be attached for, I think it's called man, I had to look it up. Unnecessary inciting harassment. And I just happened to be scrolling through and I looked at it and I was like, man, that's interesting. What is that? And it's talking about security guards can be civilly liable for unnecessarily, basically escalating a situation. How many security guards do you guys know? How many videos have I shared where a security guard is, yeah, motherfucker, get the fuck out of here, motherfucker, I'll beat your fucking ass. Blah, 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 blah. Guys, you are working as a state registered agent of authority. It is a very, very, very thin, small level of authority. But by taking a class, by being issued a number, a security guard number, by taking a state mandated class, by going through all of the things that we have to do to be able to work as a security guard, as low level as that is, you are still representing the state. And you can't just be out there doing all kinds of wild shit. And there is literally in this manual a section that is talking about security guards inciting and escalating to where that person could legitimately, would it happen? Can it happen? Does it happen? Probably not. But there's room in there for someone to bring a civil lawsuit against you. Y'all better read this shit. You better read it. And you better let that affect how you do your job. Because
I have a question.
go ahead.
Boy, I'm going to say this. Your YouTube people are going to be like, your wife is fucking crazy and wild and just outrageous. But what is it that makes people so against de-escalation? If I had to ask the question how I want to ask it, I would say, do men think that using de-escalation tactics is in some way like taking the pussy way out, to put it very bluntly? Because when I hear stories and we talk about things, and we talk about things that people say in response to videos you put up or things that you say and how you do things, it's like, my deduction is there seems to be this attitude that like de-escalation is for the weak and I'm going to go in and crack some skulls, right? So hearing you talk about this legislation and the last couple of things, like,
well, hey, let's ask. So PBE, you're in the room right now. What is it that you dislike about de-escalation? Why are you so against it? So Morgan is asking, why would someone be against de-escalation? It seems like the easier way to handle a situation.
I'm not saying it's easier, but it seems in general across the board in authoritative positions, security, policing, we want to see these things where it's more, there's more resolution and not escalation. So my question is, why is it that in my opinion, there just seems to be so much negativity surrounding de-escalation tactics? I'm going to also stereotype and say from men. And to me, the attitude tends to stem from men who are like, who say it's bullshit. And I just have to take that as some sort of like
it's
bullshit, ego masculinity clause where they're like, no, I'm cracking skulls.
Hang on. It's ego. It's ego.
Well, why don't they just join the military if they want to just go out and bust some skulls and
because that's too hard.
Turn into a SEAL, like,
because that's too hard. There's only there's like 4,000 Navy SEALs and there's like 300,000. I don't know, whatever. There's such a small number of people that can do that, and
or be an MMA fighter. Fuck.
Because there's consequences to that.
Oh, you mean like they get their ass beat? They have to work super fucking hard.
Hey, you can go down. Hey, listen, any person can go down to their local MMA gym if you want to get it in.
Okay.
You can walk in the 10th planet right now and be like, hey, I think I'm a motherfucking badass and I'm ready to go. You can pull some Tom Hardy shit. Here's the waiver. They're all for it. Right? And, Big Diesel was talking. Diesel, chief of police down in North Carolina, he was like, most cops take their badge away, take their taser, take their gun. They ain't going to do shit. And it's not just the taser, the badge, and the gun. It's the fact that they have the weight of the state behind them. And that there is not going to be any level of, there's going to be a very small level of scrutiny and questioning if they are involved in something where they have to go hands-on with somebody. And security guards take their cues from law enforcement, which is why, if you've been following my channel long enough, this has been my argument. Military guys get out of the military, go into law enforcement. Law enforcement agencies, because they make their money on fees, fines, and taxes, they have to impose laws on people, or they have to impose and enforce their will on people in order to generate that revenue, right? They also get a lot of their equipment from surplus military. Now, if you give a guy a knife, he's going to play with it. You have a 9-year-old, or how old is he? Is he 9? You give a 9-year-old boy a knife, he's going to play with it. You give a police department a tank, it ain't going to just sit in the back and get used for taking pictures. They're going to find a reason to roll that tank out. And it's no different with security guards. We take our cues from law enforcement. Law enforcement is tactically centered and tactically engaging every single situation. And if you watch video after video after video, they're engaging people with aggressive words and cuss words and going hands on, and security guards do the exact same thing, which has been my argument that we need to change the engagement of how people are treated by law enforcement, because it does filter down to the everyday security guard. Right? So if they're not going to de-escalate, if they're not going to try and handle things differently,
if I can understand that, how come, like, what stops other security from what stops other security from literally going, if I act this certain way, I'm going to lose my job? Are security jobs just so aplenty? Like, are people just not worried in the security, taking cops and their positions out of it?
PBE says de-escalation only works if the subject cares about the consequences of their actions.
Do you think the people in all the time you've been doing this care about their consequences?
I think that PBE and I think that law enforcement have it flipped. We are putting the onus. We're the ones who are in a position. So let's just say, from a security standpoint or a law enforcement standpoint, you are the one who is in the position of interacting with someone. If someone is going about their day and they're doing some dumb shit, the fact that they're doing dumb shit in public already shows you that they don't have a clear wherewithal that their decision is a bad decision, right? You can't. I just read to you guys something about a statute that I did not know exists, and I've been doing security here for 4 years, and I literally have an educational channel about private security. I just found something out yesterday. The average person doesn't even know that a security guard manual with Oregon revised statutes even exists. Right. So we can't put the onus on the person to be the one that de-escalates. That's why we're there. That's like saying, hey, I'm a mental health professional, and my ability to help the crazy person only works if they recognize that they're crazy. No, you're the professional. They're there because they're crazy. If they recognize that they were crazy and could make a change, they wouldn't be there. So you can't come in, hey, you crazy motherfucker, you fucking, you can't be doing that. Like, how are they going to respond? You have to come in with a crazy person like, hey, Steve, how are you today? Yeah, tell me about that. Right? Mm-hmm. If you come in on 10, what are you expecting?
Crazy likes crazy.
And I don't think that most security guards care. To be fair, most security guards make just above minimum wage. If you're making just above minimum wage and you get to potentially once, twice, or multiple times before you get fired, beat somebody up or get into it with somebody, why would you care? Because you could literally go and work at Taco Bell in Portland. I don't know if anybody needs to know this or not. Taco Bell in Portland pays $19 an hour.
Shit, you didn't tell me that.
Just to scoop some sloop.
Everybody loves Taco Bell. But right? I could eat there and make $19
You get $19 an hour, a free meal, and they don't drug test.
Well, that's not relevant to me, but that's
I'm just saying,
exciting.
Some people,
Damn.
Some people says some people shouldn't be in security. They want to be law enforcement or maybe military. They can't take the image out of their heads. Yeah, and it's unfortunate because police officers are setting that standard. Somebody says maybe they can't join the military. People only work private security for one of 3 reasons. They are wanting to go into the military, they're wanting to go into law enforcement, and they are waiting until that opportunity provides itself. They are wanting to go into law enforcement and they can't for whatever reason, or they have found themselves in private security at the bottom level or the top level, right? What I mean by that is there's a number of people that are working in private security because they just need the job. And at the very bottom of private security, there's a ton of opportunities for work. It's like a pyramid. The base of that pyramid is very, very, very wide and very, very, very deep. So people can get work immediately. You can go on Indeed, find a private security job, and be working by 6 o'clock tonight. At the top of that is more advanced levels of private security, whether that's like close executive protection or, mercenary type work. And then as you get down a little bit further into that, you have former military, former law enforcement work, like what I work in, right? Where you make a pretty decent living. But still, the people that are in that level of the three, they found themselves in that environment. Maybe you retired from law enforcement. Maybe you got out of law enforcement. You got out of the military. Maybe you were working in some capacity. And then you ended up taking this job in private security. I took this job in private security when I was trying to get into the sheriff's department. I was doing this until that went through. When it didn't go through, voila, I'm already in private security. And me and Brian were talking about that. Brian said you can look at every person in our company, and all of them had some issue that led them to private security. I work with a lot of former police officers. Some of those guys, they retired. The ones that retired, they will work a couple of days a week, but they have a very, very, very small tolerance for bullshit. The first time that the schedule doesn't work for them, the first time that they get chastised or called out by the store manager, they're like, I got a pension, bro. Deuces. And you can't fault them for that, right? There's other guys that work for our company that were good police officers and got in trouble. Maybe they got a DUI. Maybe they got into a domestic. Maybe they got into an issue where they couldn't get along with the chief. Like, it could be anything. Mm-hmm. And so they got out of law enforcement, and now they're working in a capacity where they still dress like a cop. They still carry themselves like cops. They still get to do a little bit of cop things, depending on where we're working. And they get to make somewhat close to the same amount of money. Then you have people that might have gone into the academy and washed out. They never passed. They couldn't get through it. It was too hard. And this gives them an opportunity. You have guys that got into it with the sheriff about their concealed carry permit and were told to go fuck themselves and they weren't going to get hired. Right? Mm-hmm. That happens. So a lot of times that's the makeup of that aspect. That's why people don't just go and join law enforcement and become security. But it is all boiled down to ego. People don't want to lose. They don't want to, look like they don't have authority. They don't want to look like somebody told them to kick rocks. And, people say the worst things to us in security. And a lot of people aren't willing to just go, all right, man, whatever. They'd rather chase you down and prove to people who aren't. We think that people are watching us. They're not. When we're screaming and yelling, trying to make our point that we ain't no bitch, and we see people doing this, like, they're not looking at us because they're watching. They're looking at us because they think that you're fucking crazy. They're just like trying to get away from you. Like, They're not watching the situation thinking to themselves like, man, that security guard really didn't take no shit. They're like, man, that dude is unhinged. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got a bunch of yeps. I don't know what I was saying at the time. Jack Spade Production says, or a person is truthful and going in looking for help. The test is good, but if not, can go bad. Personally, I choose security while going through college, but love the work. I've been doing it since my mid-20s. That's Phoenix Rising. Billy Kidd said, I started private security with the intention of going into fugitive recovery, but never did. I stayed in security. I've been doing it since 2017. I make a decent living, but it took way too long. Yep.
Listen, fugitive recovery, that's pretty fucking cool.
Yeah, that'd be a great conversation to have.
Ooh, yeah.
Jack Spade Production says, in Texas, it's very difficult to get more than 18 an hour. But in Texas, you guys, it's a felony to assault a security guard, right? I mean, that, I'd rather make more money and deal with getting hit. Texas has a lot of city-based security, though. Police departments, yeah, correct. I learned yesterday that bail recovery, fugitive recovery in Oregon is illegal. You cannot do fugitive recovery. So if you're hiding from the cops, it's the best place to be. That's probably why we have so many homeless people here.
I'm really disappointed in that, actually. like super disappointed.
Why? Do you read nasty books about bail recovery people or something?
No, but you're giving me a good idea to write a book. Let me
get
tell you.
out of here.
I was thinking of maybe that's why Dog set up in Hawaii and not,
Dog set up in Hawaii because he's a felon. Can you give me another coffee, please? Dog the Bounty Hunter.
I went on such a Dog the Bounty Hunter kick 18 to 20 years ago because his son Leland, when I was like a teenager, I was like, yep, he's super sexy. So
I'm gonna have to check her, man. She's always talking about other dudes on my stream. What's wrong with you?
Y'all are the one that brought it up.
You get me over here acting like PBE.
It would be cool to have a few.
Can you add some water to that? That's a lot of cold brew. You made me shit myself right here on TV with everybody.
Sorry.
That's enough.
Oh my gosh.
Coffee. PBE, the man of the hour. I tried to join the U.S. Army. I studied criminal justice to be a PA state police. I never finished, though.
It's never too late, PBE.
It's never too late. How old are you? How old are you, PBE? And what does PBE mean? Is that like Pennsylvania Bail Enforcement? What does PBE stand for? I'll give you some time. I want to know how old you are, and I want to know what PBE stands for. The Army is a great place for you, by the way. Your rage, you would be shocked what I was doing before. I probably would not. There's so many opportunities to do great things in security, asset protection, nuclear power plants. Nuclear power plants, when we lived in Missouri, we had a acquaintance. They were making, I think, $39 to $40 an hour, and this is in central Missouri. Like 40.
Was this old boy?
No, it was. Oh. Was it Katie? Was that her name with the glasses? That was Katie. Went to school with you.
Oh yeah.
But that was hard work. I think they worked they might have done 16s, and it was like 16s. I think you worked like 3 or 4 days straight, and then had so many days. So it's hard work. The nuclear power plant in Missouri was hard work, but she was making crazy money. Yeah, there's a lot of different things that you can do in private security. The game is wide open, guys. Here in Portland, there's so much work because we have the Timbers professional soccer, you have the Thorns professional soccer for the women, you have the Portland Trailblazers. Then on top of that, we have the Moda Center, which is where the Portland Trailblazers play concerts all the time. We have concert venues everywhere here. Like if you wanted to do close protection for like celebrities, I've been approached by that a couple of times to do some work for that. There's so many things you could do here. Let's see here. Deputy Chief says, I live 25 miles from Los Alamos National Laboratory. They clear 38 an hour with the security clearance. Awesome.
Nice.
Phoenix Rising, I might have the opportunity to be a manager. I'm praying it works out for me. Just got done with the interview. Big Poppy says, in some of these positions, you don't need law enforcement or military background. I'm Army, by the way. Congratulations. Thank you for your service. PBE says, I tried to join the U.S. Army due to 9/11, study criminal justice, so I can try for the Pennsylvania State Police. I never finished none of it.
PBE, so I'm going to take a shot in the dark and say you're at least 42, since you don't want to answer that question.
Jack Spade Productions says, I need a Victoria's Secret one-way security gig for close protection. Yeah.
Well, y'all haven't been buying enough Victoria's Secret for women because they've had to, in the last, decade, it's good stuff, but their shit's just gone downhill with all the stuff, so I don't know if they're even doing the runway stuff anymore. It normally happens around Christmas, and I haven't seen, big advertisements for their shows.
PBE stands for Pennsylvania Bear Eater. Okay, that brings a lot of other questions. You eat bears or something? Like what?
That could be the title of a book. I would say it'd be a male romance.
Don't If you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
Jose Guzman says, I'm going into arm position. Just got offered 25 an hour in California. Any advice?
Well, it probably depends on where in California.
Yeah, where are you at in California? That's good though.
General vicinity. You don't have to say specifically.
Jack Spade Production says the local sheriff does security for a Dollar Tree here and gets paid $45 an hour. That is crazy.
Dude, Dollar Trees is shit, and apparently they pay good. We got Dollar Trees everywhere. Why don't you be looking into that? Everywhere.
I've got to run. We're getting busy here, y'all. Hey, Billy Kid, nice to meet you, bro. You take care. Oh, he says it's Dillard's. Yeah, I can see that. All right, guys.
Good luck with all your endeavors,
good luck.
guys.
Hey, man, my guy, Jose Guzman, on my channel, if you go to playlist, I have over 1,000 videos. Okay, look through the playlist. There's a lot of information on there. De-escalation, gun retention, anything. Just go through my videos. And there's a lot of other great channels. If you are on my channel, it'll probably recommend to you other channels as well. Anything that it recommends, check that out. A lot of good people that are on this thread right now that offer great information. So just seek out good security information. My biggest piece of advice is that you win every fight that you do not get yourself into. You know, keep your distance. Distance gives you time. Time gives you options. De-escalate situations. Only go hands-on or get involved if you absolutely have to. And remember that you are not losing the fight by not getting into the fight. Okay? Especially in California. You guys are way more litigious, way more left-leaning and liberal than even Oregon. So, you know, situations that you get yourself involved in, there's a lot of opportunity for you guys to get criminally and civilly involved in situations. So understand your post orders, know what you're there to do, be trained, be confident, be comfortable in your own skin, and don't allow yourself to get triggered or pushed into a situation where you respond out of anger or out of frustration. Always keep the main thing, which is to make your money and do your job, and just don't do what you're not supposed to do, and don't get yourself in any trouble, okay? PBE says he's 38 years old. You can still join the military, bro. They will take you, and they are giving a huge signing bonus. The U.S. Army is at its lowest recruitment that it's been ever. I think that they are down either 30 to almost 40%. And if you're 38, you can still get in. And I would highly suggest, if you have any ability, go down to a recruiter and talk to him. Hey, I don't know if you have, like, you know, any sort of criminal issues or background issues. The Army is the most accepting of all kinds of issues. So, yeah, the Army cutoff is 40. There you go. I would go down there and I would talk to a recruiter and say, what do I need to do to get in? Because I think that would be good for you, man. Your willingness to get involved in things, your willingness to run up on people, your willingness to allow yourself to tap into your anger, that could be used. There are infantry locations that would love that. And I don't say that as a joke. I mean that 110%. You make good money, you get a hell of a bonus, and it would give you direction, you know?
But they won't take me. I could do it.
Got too many tattoos.
I know. Definitely affects my ability to do a job.
Get your tattoos covered up. All right. All right, guys, we're out.